A series of memorial services have been held today to mark the first anniversary of Queensland's devastating floods. 19 people died in the deluge and small communities in its path were all but washed away. For many survivors, there's still a long way to go before their lives return to anything like normal. An inquiry into all aspects of the tragedy is due to be release its findings at the end of next month. I spoke earlier to Queensland Premier Anna Bligh in Grantham. Anna Bligh, 1 year on, how do you think Queensland is faring? What's the mood there?
Well, this is a very tough week for Queenslanders and particularly here in the Lockyer Valley as we remember some of the worst of the disasters last year. It's a time for looking back and reliving and remembering some very painful and traumatic events, but it's also very much a time for looking forward. And there's a great deal of positive and hopeful attitudes here in the Valley and the ceremonies we've been part of today.
What's been learnt in the last 12 months?
Well, these events were without precedent. They tested every part of our system like it had never been tested before. It tested us as human beings and it tested us as communities. I think we can say at the end of 12 months we came through that test and we've come out of it stronger, we've come out of it better prepared for the future. We hope we never see anything like it again, but we've taken a lot of lessons. How to be better prepared, how to give better warnings. We've had better training now for people on things like swiftwater rescues. Here in Grantham, they've learnt that some part of their town, in order to be safe, really needs to be relocated, and they've gone through a whole program of land swaps. So it's changed the face of some of our towns.
There are still people who are angry that they weren't warned earlier. Do you think that the inquiry into the floods will find that there should have or could have been warnings sooner?
Well, the Commission of Inquiry is set up as a completely independent body to ask just those hard questions. If there are things we could have done better, then we need to know about them, and we certainly have charged the Commission with giving us any of those answers. I look forward to their report in February. What we've got here is a community that's still grieving, with a lot of work to go and a lot of recovery ahead of it, but one that feels a great sense of pride today about how far they've come in very extreme circumstances.
Some stories have emerged about communities divided with jealousies over people being treated differently by insurance companies and over the distribution of donations. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think it's been important all year to be very understanding that people who have been through something traumatic will experience pain and grief, and that will manifest itself in all kinds of ways. And so it's been a question of being patient, talking to people as often as is needed, explaining things as many times as you have to, and bringing people with us. And I think I take my hat off to these communities. These events could have pulled them apart, but what they did was pull them together. But I also give thanks to all of those Australians who helped us. The donations that they made, the time that they gave us, the effort that they went to make sure we knew that they cared, has really contributed to helping us be where we are today.
You set up a $7 billion recovery fund. How much of that has been spent?
This is a $7 billion budget over the next 2.5 years. We're close to spending now more than $1 billion of that, but now it's really ramping up. Much of the early phase was about the cheaper part of road recovery, for example, doing the temporary fix on potholes so that we could drive on them. Over the next 2 years, we'll be rebuilding those roads entirely from scratch and permanently fixing them, built to modern engineering standards. So we're on track, we're on budget, and what was always going to be a 2 to 3 year program is going to be exactly that.
How do you think the insurance companies have performed?
Oh, look, I think there are many, many people in Queensland who feel very let down, angry, and in many cases betrayed by their insurance companies. We certainly learnt that they're not all the same, and there are some that went the extra yards to help people. There are others that made their lives more difficult. Some of the things we've learned as a nation will equip every Australian to cope with something like this better in the future. The need for a standard definition of flood, for example. When we see those reforms that the federal government are putting in place this year, it will make people safer and better protected in these sorts of circumstances everywhere in Australia in the future.
What do you think has been the most difficult part of the recovery process so far?
Oh, it's been such a long journey, it's hard to pick one moment, but I think on one hand everybody would like these things to be fixed more quickly and for things to happen, overnight. But the reality for human beings is that sometimes it takes us time to make hard decisions. It takes time for us to be ready to move to the next phase of recovery. And you know, I think on one hand we'd all like it to happen quicker, but we're realistic about just how long these things take.
I understand that this is not a day for politics, but Queenslanders are no doubt looking to the future and they'd like to know which government is going to oversee the recommendations of the inquiry. So can I ask you, when will you call an election?
Look, I have said that this is not a week for speculating about those issues. We're still going through memorial services. There are another 2 this evening in communities where they lost people, lost children, and these are very, very traumatic moments. So there'll be plenty of time for politics in 2012 in Queensland, and I'll be happy to speculate about those things at an appropriate time.
Finally, Premier, what do you say to the people still not back in their homes, not back in their businesses? What hope can you give them?
Well, I know that many of those people who are waiting because the construction is now underway. But for those people, if they're still battling an insurance company, if they're still a bit lost as to where their next step might be, help is still available. We're still funding local councils and community organisations to go and work with people to help them make the next steps. There are still funds available for people who may still need them. So I'd say to people, it's not too late to ask for help. It's not too late to get assistance, and please, if you need help, we're still here and we'll be here for a long time.
Anna Bligh, thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.